Hey guys, girls and cat robot enjoyers.
So, let's be honest. This thing is definitely a Morgana wannabe.
I am not a cat. Say that again and I'll make you regret it.
Pretending not to be a cat, but in all honesty, Oneshot is a really good game, made by two people, as usual, for indie games. It started off as a freeware game in 2014 that you can only play once. Nico literally fucking dies, because the bulb, which I'll explain later, breaks. The broken light bulb could be symbolism of them dying. Also, Nico is canonically non-binary or something, which makes this a lot harder to talk about, honestly. In fact, it's not even confirmed really, but eh. But anyway, this game is 10 years old and will be 11 in June. The game got a remake for PCs in December 2016, which added another game developer to the list. And then War Machine came out for consoles and PC in September 2022 and 2024, respectively. There's also a Pancake episode that released last year to celebrate the 10-year anniversary, but it's not of much importance, because we'll be talking about the console version, Oneshot War Machine Edition. With that, we can get started with the intro. The game opens up with a PC booting up, and this sounds a bit too close to Kineo Pet. But don't worry, it's different. You're not on your desktop, you're on a computer called the World Machine, which won't be relevant for a while. There's obviously some applications, but they're not important, for now. We click on the desktop shortcut for saying, One shot. And we get an animation of a cat boy waking up. Oh wait, they're not a cat. Oh boy, are they? Okay, we'll just go with cat-like as the wiki says. Nico wakes up in a mysterious house that looks unlike his own. The area is dark and unsettling, and Nico is a bit unsettled by the surroundings. Especially since they're like canonically 8 or something. But anyway, the game is very puzzle oriented. DLC and Oneshot both manipulate your PC or desktop to scare you, but One Shot does it to elevate the narrative and create unique puzzles that can't be replicated without just copying them. The puzzles are iconic and impressive, but I'd still say Oneshot's scares are much more impressive, but bear in mind that One Shot came first. The puzzles make you either mix things together, or try every combination if you're less creative, or it does funny things to your PC, which I'll cover later. Some puzzles, like in the Barrens, can be confusing and frustrating at first, but beyond that, I'd say most puzzles are a hit. The first puzzle tasks us with finding out the password of a computer. We do this by picking up a remote that we can't read in the dark, but in the window the light shines upon it, showing the numbers 8, 3, 4 and 7, missing from the remote, and with the colours red, blue, yellow and green assigned to them respectively. The password is actually random for every playthrough, but you have to place 3, 7, 8 and 4 to match the colours to the numbers. The PC is useless beyond it telling you that your actions will affect Nico, and your mission is to help them leave this world, which is in ruin, and that you only have one shot to do it. Spooky. The doors unlock and you can grab a withered branch from the bathroom. Why there's a branch in the bathroom is beyond me, but I won't judge. The fridge has a bottle of alcohol, possibly vodka, and you can combine the two to wet the branch, emptying the bottle and allowing you to get a torch from the TV's dangerous spark. This is what happens when you use virgin media or now. Once we light the fireplace, we can get a key out of it, for some reason. But regardless, there's a door that the camera won't show you on the right, and opening it leads you to a basement which has a single light bulb with no light source emanating from it. Once Nico picks it up, it lights up and success music plays, telling you you've beaten the house puzzle. To exit the house, Nico puts a light bulb in the front door which has a hole for the bulb to fit in. Now we are in the Barrens, and yeah, it's quite barren and purple here, like Nico. Also, the poll I made to decide if I should keep using they, them, or just he, him to refer to Nico was a tie, so thanks guys. I'll just refer to them as he because it's a lot easier. Also, my brother says it doesn't really matter as far as he's aware. Anyway, you can go down and find an array of robots with varying degrees of disrepair. Some are salvageable, but in other places they are beyond repair. Continuing on leads us to this robot, which has a unique design, which means it must be notable, and yeah, this is ProfitBot. Nico is confused and lost, and ProfitBot helps to give Nico a goal. Nico is apparently the messiah of this world. He recognises the light bulb in Nico's hand, or rather paw, and calls it a sun. Apparently Nico's goal is to return the sun to this massive tower you see in an animation when you first enter the Barrens. If it breaks, the world ends, so don't drop it. Whoops. Nico asks ProfitBot about the computer he saw in the house, saying meta things, and Nico is Nico. So the question is, who is the message directed at? The answer would be you, of course, or whatever you set your name to be. You are literally the god of this world. According to ProfitBot, only Link can save his elder. Because of the sun, only Nico can communicate with you. Nico is told to close his eyes and focus. Nico asks if you can hear him and says your name. You can choose yes to keep your base name, which is either the name from a previous playthrough or from your system default. Or you can choose a new name, such as Nico, which makes Nico surprised that you share a name. Nico asks ProfitBot about going home to his mama, and ProfitBot doesn't know what to say. Since he's a robot, it's beyond his code. His name literally tells you all he knows about the prophecy. He knows nothing else, nor can he interact with anyone else, which saddens Nico, but he must press on. Also, after interacting with him and gaining control of your character, you get one of these new friend collectibles which details about the characters throughout the game. Along that is other overworld collectibles such as wallpapers, themes and font colours. There's a lot of notes in the area, but they're mostly irrelevant. Some of them help with puzzles while others are low relevant. For the sake of making this video easier and quicker, and because I'm also lazy, we'll be skipping the notes. But this note in particular details backup cells used to power up the Guardians, Prophetbot and other important characters we'll meet later. Another note tells us to use gas masks to certain zones. These are indicated by Nico struggling to breathe and the purple plumes of smoke that remind me of Sticker Star's Poisonous Water in World 3. Anyway, this home houses a robot that notices you as the Messiah and notes that she was expecting someone a little taller and not the appearance of a cat. Nico tells her he's not a cat, and this starts one of the most biggest memes of the game. Nico is not a cat. Cats walk on 4 legs. Nico doesn't know anything about furries. I mean, he is 8, but to be fair, a 7 to 8 year old kid in my friend's primary school tried to commit, with a skipping rope. So why does Nico get to be naive? The robot seems to have some kind of pessimistic view on life. Not nihilism, but bordering on it, I guess. I guess the closest thing to it is apocalypticism, but even then, I don't want to go super in depth about things to the point where people are going to comment about how absurd my analysis is. Same applies to calling her nihilistic. We'll just say she's extremely pessimistic. Anyway, she's pessimistic and believes the world is going to end if the sun was placed in my favourite Jump Trash level. She also tells us that the tower Nico is headed to will be his final destination. Once the light bulb is placed, Nico will presumably go home, but she doesn't count on it. Also, a note says her name is Silver, and there's a screwdriver on her shelf. The mines are closed, but Silver is meant to accompany you at least once into it. There's not much here except foreshadowing and a broken camera lens. Anyway, we go to this factory with a crowbar we got from another room, which houses a bed. There's a lot of unpowered robots and missing parts to robots lying about inside, but the only purpose we have here is to interact with this machine. We're meant to put a metal rod / pipe in it to crush it into a crowbar, but if you use the sun instead, you get an achievement. It's also another meme of the game. You can combine the sun and the crowbar to make Nico shocked that you want to smash the sun. Either method gives you the achievement. Also, you can also smash the ball, but it doesn't work. You can try to do that at least. We use this crowbar to break open this box, or chest, or whatever it is, and the contents inside consist of a broken battery. Really helpful. But we can use the screwdriver we got from Silver's home to pop the lens out of the camera, which we can use to fix the broken battery. Then we can use the sun to power the battery. Now we can power the generator, which also powers the robots. The power generator also powers a computer which, when we interact with, acts meta and tells us to interact with a safe and use a code. This code can be found in Documents and Oneshot.txt. The safe is found on the way to Silver's home and below one of the gas zones. Once we input the random code, the contents feature a journal in an unknown language and a gas mask which, as you guessed, is used for the gas zones. Above the safe, a purple glitchy thing appears, which surprises and shocks us and Nico. Now the top half of the Barrens features loads of things, like apartments that contain things such as a hospital with an empty plastic syringe, ladders Nico is scared of, and robots Nico pretends to be. In addition, there's this Guardian robot that you meet as soon as you enter the apartment area. He's mostly irrelevant though, but he does have a backup cell in the apartment to the left of him. Also, to the left of the apartment is a weird blobby thing that you can put the syringe in. Above that is some kind of gas low enough for Nico to put the empty bottle in. To the bottom right of the apartment is this second factory, which has a pair of rubber gloves and a passage blocked by wooden boards. We can use the crowbar to break the boards. In the room, there is a massive amount of robots, none of which are on production line. What is important is that we have a sponge that we can use. Now that we have everything we need, we can combine the bottle of smoke and filled syringe to get a bottle of acid. We combine that with the sponge, and since we're handling dangerous substances that will probably taste good, we need the rubber gloves. Now we've wet the sponge, and we can go over to this robot on a boat called Robot. That's a good one. Well, he's actually the 310th robot model, but he's still special. He can't move because he's rusty, but that's okay, because we have that wet sponge. We clean him, and he tells us that he can take us to Detroit, or rather the Glen, but his systems have fried, meaning he can't follow his programming. He tells us to ask Silver, the head engineer, about it. And when we go over there, she gives us an amber, and now we can go back on the beautiful boat trip. Nico notes the black clover design, and she replies by saying it's a common plant in the world. It's probably symbolism for something, but who knows. Before we leave, you can play chess with her, and she talks about this word Nico and I are confused about: taming. Taming up to this point and beyond is complicated to talk about, so everyone is ominous and shady about the old deal. I think the reason is because they either don't know, or as I said, they can't talk about it properly because of how confusing the concept is. She can't explain it, but she is tamed. Anyway, we go up to Robot and give him the amber. This makes him remember where the Glen is now, but the boat doesn't have the capacity, so Nico has to remove some unimportant items, and they set off. The trip is beautiful, and before long, we arrive. Robot must return to his station, so we are now stuck in this green shit stain. This game also introduces us officially to the collectibles, and while you can get the collectibles beforehand, this is the official intro, I guess. Nico can't pick them up, so you must use your cursor to get them. The people here are like weird bird people, but not too bird-like to the point where they become furries. I guess it's like tribal, but even then I don't want to say that. They're village people, that's all I'll say. Above where you came from is the village with a sheep herder that needs your help, but you're carrying the sun, so you cannot help. Nico can't just leave the sun in front of him for some reason, but we ignore him for now. Moving past the village is a non-wandering trader that we can trade with later. There are branches blocking the way forward, so we must go back below the village. Below where we start the Glen from is where we need to progress. There's a voice shouting a guy named Alula. When we continue downward, he sees us and asks us if we've seen a little girl who is his sister, and then notices the sun. He apologises for being rude, and Nico asks who he's looking for. Alula is shorter than Nico, has long blue hair, and 2 blue feathers atop her head. Last place he saw her was in the ruins, so obviously we're gonna go find her, right? Yeah, let's probably go do that. On the way to the ruins resides a guardian, which is not too dissimilar to the one we found at the Barrens. We need to sign our name to continue the refuge. Well, he notices the sun, so that should be enough, right? Apparently not. Navigating to the bottom of these ruins leads to this lady who's some kind of nature goddess. She's suffering and wants us to give her the sun, and I guess we have to do it to progress. Doing so makes her feel safe, and she removes the vines blocking certain paths. Now you can progress to the top right of the ruins, where there's another computer that changes your background wallpaper to be a specific pattern that another room in the ruins needs. Once we find that room and use the pattern to complete the puzzle, we find that Alula was trapped in the room by those glitches we saw from the Barrens. Only these ones are green rather than purple, which probably means for the refuge they'll be red, due to the refuge being red on the map we saw back at the Barrens. Anyway, apparently Alula's brother is called Calamus, and Nico asks why she knew he was the Messiah, and she replies by saying Nico's eyes remind her of the sun. Anyway, we take her to him, and you can actually herd the sheep while having her in your party, which gives you unique dialogue. Completing the puzzle also has a funny victory theme, kinda like the jingle from Memory. You get a piece of wool that you can use to bar with the trader east of you. Being unsure of the offer allows you to haggle for a better trade. This gives you one of those commemorative meme t-shirts that is for a little secret. Alula and Calamus are reunited, and Alula tells him that she was trapped in a room by the squares. The village people clearly respect Nico a lot, because Alula and Calamus feel it's rude to call Nico by his name. But Nico is confused why people think of him so highly beyond the fact he has a sun in his hands, or rather paws. Nico is just a kid like the other two, so why should he be treated differently for possessing a light bulb? Nico tells them this, and they offer Nico to come to their home, saying no misses out on an interaction, so why would you want to walk to them when you could just be teleported there and get a unique interaction out of it. Anyway, Nico says he can't get past the tiny minuscule block, and the two giggle at him, with Calamus noting that they get used to the debris after a while. Alula kicks it out the way, and Nico never thought you could just move physical objects. Yeah, I get that. It's a video game. Most barely have physical objects unless they start a valve and release steam. We enter the house and they give us a feather. It's an heirloom by an acquaintance of their father, the prophet gave them this feather before she died. Allegedly, the feather could help them see into the future. The back garden isn't all too important, yet beyond the wallpaper you can collect, there is a path ahead. It leads to a graveyard where the two could see their mother, but the path right now needs a boat or something else buoyant. There is a generator room that will be relevant later. Loads of robots with one giving you a tube of water that you'll need for an optional quest in the refuge. You can combine the feather you got from Calamus and Alula with the bottle of dye from the trader to make an ink pen to sign your name to enter the refuge for some reason. Before you can sign your name, the robot reminds you that you need the sun you gave to the dying flower goddess Maize. The sun is left and she's gone. Quite morbid, but there's also a kennel of corn that's also for the same mission in the refuge. Now you can enter a tunnel type thing leading to the refuge, but before that, the glitchy green squares chase you down. They can't actually hurt you, but it's the illusion of danger. Now we're trapped in the refuge. Bloody brilliant. It's quite nice if you ignore the 7 million squares in the catwalks, but there's a guard that greets us and we can show him the kennel of corn that we got from earlier. And there's a path that leads to an ominous room in which a plant pot resides in the middle. You can place the seed in here, but it needs dirt, and you can get it from a guy in the apartment called Mason, and that name traumatizes me for reasons that some of you may know. Descending south leads to some kind of guy shouting and banging on something as if you were late for something. And continuing in that same direction leads you to a guy kicking an elevator that won't work due to a missing panel saying ground. In this cafe owned by a girl called Lang, there is a metal can saying coffee grounds that can be picked up. In the apartment there's the aforementioned Mason, and below him is a room to the right with a magnet and a guy to the right. Another room in between the one with the magnets and the locked room, which is also the magnet room, is this room with a pair of scissors above a head of hair. Bit weird, but oh well. In the office area there's this clock lady called Watcher, who you can befriend by talking to her twice, I guess. The office has a tape in it which is needed for later, but for now we can use the scissors to cut open a piece of the can and fold it into a rectangular shape. Then you can attach magnets to the button. If you attempt to put this on the elevator, it falls apart and says you tried. Now you can use the aforementioned tape to fix the button that you tried to fix. Now you can go to the elevator, but while fixing those red squares appear on them. Then you can open it to lead to a scene where you ask the guy slamming the door about his life, or sit in absolute deafening silence. But first you need a code to even enter the elevator. In this room below the Watcher there is an ominous door that won't open, an observatory deck above it, and what we're interested in is at the bottom, a computer that's red. The computer gives you a film that shows an assortment of random numbers. If you play Cookie Clicker, you know that you can just drag the window and dump the cookie in the milk by putting it in the bottom of your desktop. The same applies here. It gives you the golden numbers that read 63014. This is the only code that I'm pretty sure isn't random, but it's weird, but yeah. Now we can put the code in, and before we ask the guy about his life, Nico needs to sleep, which he's needed to do in the Barrens and the Glen before. I've neglected to mention it. Nico dreams of being home and eating pancakes his mother made. But now you can go to the elevator, and if you slept just now, apparently he's been sitting in the elevator waiting while Nico's been sleeping. That's some proper commitment there. Anyway, apparently he fixes lights for a living, and his name is Lamplighter. What a unique name. I accidentally called him Gaslighter sometimes, which is pretty funny. As the name suggests, the place is full of refugees from the Glen, meaning this is the Bradford of Oneshot. In fact, we saw some earlier in some of the rooms in the compartment complex where Mason was. Same with a Roomba that Nico could ride. I just keep forgetting a lot. Our quest is to find a library that will hopefully lead us to the tower, which is where we would place the light bulb to fulfill the prophecy. We're now in the second half of the refuge, which takes on a city-like aesthetic, complete with dark hallways, a mystical talking fox that hides behind a tree and tells you to find a way to return, a secret room you need the commemorative t-shirt from the Glen to enter, that turns out to be a secret ram cult, where the leader is the herder from the Glen, and a place where a robot takes care of his kittens, including you, whom he mistakes for a kitten. You can also befriend him. Another room, which happens to be Lamplighter's home, contains a container with 4 tube things of different shapes. Above the alleyway is some shop vendors, one of which gives you a water pill, which promises to make you never thirsty again to respond to water shortages. That'll be really helpful because my throat is dry right now. It also helps plants grow faster. That's the important part. Now we can actually do the side quest. Plant the seed, put the soil in, after asking Mason for help, combine the water tube and the water pill. But if you waste the water on accident, you can just refill it at Mason's. Wish I bloody knew that. And finally at the end, do a spoiler. Anyway, Lamplighter says we should try the factory because the library requires a keycard to progress through, courtesy of an unflexible algorithm. The head librarian, George, is busy with something and won't respond, so you need a keycard to access where she is. Characters in the library also talk about some kind of awful like he's a god, but not important yet. What is important is the factory, which is our destination now. There is a puzzle to enter further into that, which involves just guessing. Ahead is a scientist panicking about the glitches affecting robots, which we also did see in the alleyway, but I thought I should bring it up now. It seems to be corrupting the robot, and the theme of corruption will be made prominent later. Not corruption as in like greedy people, but as in like save files getting corrupted, I guess. A lot of this game is setting up and foreshadowing. Directly ahead is a room with a leading researcher who's also a robot lady who sounds very familiar. Nico comments on this to you, and the lady says something about a guy inventing a flying machine to combat the broken world. She also gives us a card which we need to surpass the robot receptionist, only problem being the facial recognition needed. We can fix the camera in this room next to the black photographer using a certain combination of the lenses and the fact all the food vendors were once scientists, I guess. Now Nico can take a photo of himself and use the glitter glue on the storage unit for the robot lady whose name is Dr. Kip Silverpoint. The unit also looks similar to Silver's storage unit. By showing Kip the amber we got from Silver, we can get unique dialogue, but now we can enter into the two rooms. One of them being the entry to where George is, and for some reason this specific room changes the music, which I'm pretty sure is completely unique music, and then the music switches back when you go into George's room. Very random. Fun fact, since George is a die, the developers made it so that she has a 1 in chance of being any of the 6 numbers on a 6-sided die. In addition, her personality and bio changes depending on which die you have, according to the wiki. Luckily, the number is determined once you enter the room, meaning you can theoretically see her personality, exit to see her bio, and reload for another number. I find it really cool that they programmed 6 different unique dialogues for her, especially since she's a relatively important character, but I digress. Anyway, we give her that strange journal that we found in the Baron's safe, get tired, and while sleeping, George translates for us. Nico dreams of again eating pancakes before looking in pure horror at the aspect of the broken light bulb to his side. George managed to translate it, and it tells us some cryptic shit that helps us to enter the tower. But some of it is foreshadowing, I think. Not entirely sure, but yeah. George gives us a die that I believe is again randomised, and sets us off. Nico says he's hungry, and we can go to the cafe for some yummy pancakes, courteous of the owner Ling, and Nico has some sort of breakdown about how he's not even sure if putting the sun in the tower will save the world, because many people have been telling him otherwise. Ling reassures him that he's managed to get this far, and that he will save the world. She also offers him more pancakes, but he rejects politely. Now we can enter the tower by entering this facility area, and there's an X in the middle in one of the rooms. I think you know what we need to do here. An animation shows Nico waking up in a dark, unfamiliar place, which progressively gets darker. Nico is now inside the tower without the sun in his possession. You won't respond to him, and it concerns Nico. Walking around aimlessly leads to a monitor that's like yellow this time, and the monitor tells Nico that you are gone, and the both of you complete your mission. The monitor feels manipulative, just like Mason. It tells Nico to rest, but he hasn't even placed the sun in the tower, and it just feels anticlimactic. He never got to say goodbye to you, and neither did you. The monitor tells you that you are done here. Do not return. There is nothing left for you. Reopening the game has an entity who appears non-malicious, telling you to look for a clover in the document, and then reopen the game. It's in My Games Oneshot. There's also your save files, and apparently a timer, which I think is exclusive to the PC version, because it wasn't in my Xbox playthrough. Regardless, Nico dreams of being in the fields again before we call out to him. Turning to the camera, and he wakes up, asking if we're there, but there's no response. But nobody came. However, there is a black clover in Nico's pocket, The monitor asks Nico why he's back and directly addresses us, telling us that we'll never escape because of it. The door leads to a set of 4 open pathways, and you have to drag the clover window to tell you which path to go. Honestly, the most tedious puzzle in the game because you have to do it like 30 times, and failing once puts you back like 5 rooms. The clover window has text that appears to be from an entity that is not malicious. It apologises for not informing us on the entity, and it's because it didn't want to put George in trouble. Apparently this entity silences people who truly know what it is, and it hurts some of this person's friends. But the person speaking to us cannot be hurt, as well as us and presumably Nico. The person seems to have never wanted the entity to exist. It seems it built the entity, and now that the entity is sentient, it seeks death, to itself and everything around it. Or so this person thinks. The entity is stalling to stop you from placing the sun in the tower. If the entity contacts you again, it will want you to smash the sun, which will end the world instantly. The sun is the Messiah's only tie to this world. Nico is trapped here indefinitely. If the sun is placed in this world, then Nico is stuck. It's hard. Nico is either going home or saving this world, which appears real to him. The person apologises again as Nico finds the light bulb and we contact him. We pick up the light bulb and we're transported back into the starting house where we found the light bulb. Instead of a sun-shaped door, there's now a set of doors, and the entity contacts us again, telling us that we've been getting help from him, and to shatter the sun. Do you even know what this world is? Nico is the thing that's only worth saving here. Can you at least tell him the truth? Now in an elevator, we have to tell Nico about the choice. He's happy about coming home and saving the world, but once you tell him the truth, he's heartbroken. We're not even sure about his fate if we save the world. Now we're in some kind of lighthouse overlooking the rest of the world. But what is the moral option? Do we smash the sun, or place it? Choosing to smash the sun has an audible sound effect, and the window shakes violently. He's now in a void and can hear his mama and a light. Nico walks off the window like a desktop pet, and below into the void, where he presumably turns home. He says his goodbyes and we roll credits. The world is turned into this weird purple like we saw at the beginning when we booted up the game first, and spawned at the house. I think it shows the world reduced to nothing as it's slowly destroyed. At the end it says, fatal error, save you not found, shutting down, presumably saying the world has just ended and the entity has won. Despite that, the world machine, aka the thing we're using to run Oneshot in universe, still works, and we can obviously access our files and do some other stuff later. But for now, we return the sun and bring light to the world. Many people are seeing the sun for the first time, and to be honest, the world looked way better without the sun. The darker aesthetic was cooler, and George is randomised in this cutscene too, and if we make the plant grow from the refuge, we get an additional animation and an achievement for making the world prosper. The only problem I have is the corruption plaguing the world. People such as Silver said that even if Nico puts the sun in the tower, you won't save the world. The world's been in ruin for a lot longer, but let's move on to Solstice, right? I've got no time to be procrastinating. Nico awakens back in the home, but instead he calls it your name. Not sure why he says it, but without the TV remote to progress, we can only interact with the monitor, which instead of giving us the number and password, gives us a word we must type in. This is found in the documents, and a lot of new files with text in them, by I believe the creator of the world, who I believe is called the author, but the words solstice is printed in darker ink. Typing this into the console has the same lines from the first playthrough, set by the entity, except it feels deja vu. We do the puzzle to escape the house again, except we have the journal from Say. For some reason, a book says ad infinitum. This means something, but I can't decipher Reddit detectives. Prophetbot's lines basically are the same, except for the fact that Nico inquires that he believes he might remember you because you call out for your name naturally. He also remembers he has to close his eyes to focus, and he says if you two have spoken, and you can say yes or no. It doesn't matter what you pick, because your choices don't matter, just like in Deltarune. Well, except for Chapter 2, Snowgrave. Back to Yearning for the Mines. We see an image of what appears to be some kind of robot that looks similar to Prophetbot. The journal glows with the black clover turning yellow. Nico recalls it never acting this way before, and Silver asks where he got it, but Nico says he's unsure. He tried reading it though, but again, it's unintelligible. Apparently this book might have been made with yellow phosphor in it, which Nico remembers the sun having. He's again not sure why he remembers that. But anyway, we can open the journal to find an image that appears to depict the mines we're in, only there's a Minecraft drawn in blue. I mean minecart. Using this image while standing on the black clover has the minecart appear in real life. This shocks both of them that a minecart just appears working. The cart can only fit Nico, but Silver can follow on the rails because of her magnetic rails holding her in place. The entity contacts us, not recognizing his place. We're going out of bounds and we should probably turn back. Nico feels we should turn around, and doing so, the entity congratulates you and the minecart disappears. I think you basically just locked out of Solstice, so don't do it, I guess. Continuing on leads us to a small area with some computers, one of which turns on randomly, and Silver investigates, leaving us to explore ahead. All that's there is another room with a puzzle, and also that thing that Nico foresaw, the Prophet Bot wannabe, until you realise this is actually the prototype Prophet Bot, probably early concept art for him. Nico asks him if they know each other, yet the Protobot is unsure as most of his memories were wiped, but we can tell him how we got here and show him the journal, which he entrusts us with his memory disk. We need it to restore his memory, and we do this by completing the puzzle that kinda makes sense. This is the original Prophet Bot, or rather his name is Prototype. Real creative. Apparently he was created before the world itself, and the current Prophet Bot is primitive in comparison to him. Rude, but the fact that Nico found him means that he's been here before, and we have bypassed the one-shot restrictions to bring him back. Nico only remembers us, and when he focuses, he remembers the tower. He also tells Nico the residents, or rather NPCs, are unaware of meeting Nico prior because they are fake, all just code. Now this feels like the setup to something all too familiar. It all fucking loops back. The Prophet Bot talks about how we're in the world machine, which is the program we use to enter the world. Nico seems no point in continuing since this world is fake, including him, but he's reassured that he's not fake. Protobot is unsure why we won't tell Nico the world is fake, and Nico turns to us and asks why we made this world doomed. The prototype tells us that we aren't responsible, but that we own a machine to access the world. As Silver said, bringing the sun back won't fix the world because of distortion affecting the world, and he sets off on our way before Silver appears, recognising the prototype. She seems very cautionary of him, but he asks for the amber and tells her to escort Nico through the barrens. He then tells us that Silver will have no way to comprehend the fact she's an NPC, so don't even bother. Finally, the entity contacts us. It says that Nico is upset, which makes sense. He's just learned that everything is basically futile. Presumably. Everything is artificial whether they look it or not. The entity seems distressed because we're breaking the world by exploring out of bounds. We're not sticking to what we're used to, guys. The glitches appear and we are escorted into the other room where presumably there's a secret room, and it's behind the computer. Silver is able to push the computer out of the way and Prophetbot calls her a show-off before they fucking die. Nico is disheartened, but Prophetbot gives him his memory disk to put in the sea. Now Nico sits with tears in his eyes as he finds solace in clutching the sun in his paws. He still wonders if there's any point to this, but now that we're in the glen we can see vegetation has affected it more, but that's because Maze is trying to hold off the glitches. Calamus and Alula are also here, with their home destroyed by the glitches, and so we follow them to the room with the ruins leading to the graveyard. Again we line up the clover and spawn in a boat that takes us to where the graveyard is. Alula is happy and I guess naive about telling their mother about finding the Messiah, while Calamus feels grief, meaning he possibly grew up with her, whereas Alula was too young. Then we meet a random inventor called Cedric who apparently invented the flying machine. No, wait, that was his dad. The plane, or as he calls it, flying machine, randomly crashed and he almost crashed in the refuge, but instead made a trip to the glen. He asks us where Proto is, and we inform him about the cave-in at the Barrens. Cedric is disheartened, but Nico shows him the discs, so it's alright, because we can bring him back with the hard drive. Proto, Cedric, and someone else is needed to open the big door. That is someone we've already actually met before, but now they are needed most. The plane needs batteries and gears to function. Funnily enough, the charged battery at the Barrens can be taken with you to make this quicker, because normally it's the barrel powering the robots in the glen that you have to get. To even continue forward, we need to go back to the maze, and she sacrifices herself to allow a vine bridge to be built. The trader can give you a music box with gears in it, so that's good. Apparently Cedric's dad actually made this as well, so that's also cool. Now we have the pieces, and we can have exposition courtesy of Cedric. He tells us we need to find a fox called Rue in the refuge finally. Depending on if you did or did not find her in the previous playthrough, the dialogue reflects that. We did meet her by the tree in that sketchy alleyway, and Nico expresses his confliction with the fact that Proto told him to think of the world as a dream, which makes him feel there's no point. He's sad that everything is fake and he's not allowed to tell him about this. In a way, he has to suppress his feelings because no one will understand. Cedric is unsure how to explain, saying how Rue is much better at these things, and he tells Nico to not be concerned about how real everything is. That's like saying, don't worry about your depression. It's kind of a shit thing to say. Maybe Nico should get better friends. Anyway, Cedric's father is apparently tied with the world machine somehow, possibly the elusive author. They weren't expecting the corruption to get so fast, and Nico inquires about what happens to those in the squares. Apparently it breaks their code and his dad lost his friends to the previous versions of the simulation. Our theory from before is true, and his dad did actually create the world machine. Again, he's secretive about the details, but caves in eventually. Get it? Caves in. He asks Nico if Proto mentioned the old world, and he did ramble something about meeting your Messiah. Then Cedric tells us that he, his father, and we can assume Rue and Proto are not a part of this world. Their real world was destroyed a long time ago. Like this world, a Messiah was promised from somewhere else to save the world. But Protobot predicted that they won't come in time. The Messiah wasn't even born yet, so some people just gave up trying to live their life to the fullest, while others wouldn't give up. This is when the world machine was created. Apparently the world machine needed to borrow the mental processing capabilities of a living person, so that's where his dad volunteers. He noticed the issues but couldn't fix them in time, and the world ended and the code floated in the void waiting for us to find it. Nico was the borrowed person apparently, because he's the Messiah. Anyway, the squares have got to the boat, so we should get going. Now we're back at the refuge, and Nico loved the ride, finding it sick. The plane gets corrupted, which saddens Nico as Calamus and Alula are now stranded on the island, possibly already corrupted. Cedric asks for the disc, and we give it to him, but we have to find Rue in the alleyway, and go to the room with the clock. Also, Cedric parachutes off a building, which is kinda funny. According to Lamplighter, the apartments are corrupted and the refugees ran into the cafe for safety. The elevator corrupts, and so we go to the clock room, where there is a doomsday timer and an elevator with a thing Nico is too short to reach, so we get Lamplighter to help. He uses his funny lamplighting skills to reach it, and we can go through, and before that, Lamplighter gets trapped in the elevator due to the glitches. Silverpoint tries to save Cedric from entering the labs, but the corruption separates the two. Silverpoint escorts Nico to the library, but everyone is concerned about Cedric's safety. George tells us he stole a book in an emergency, so she didn't try to stop him. And then labs collapse. Like Tripadel in August, his fate is ambiguous. Nico needs to find Rue, but George and Silverpoint don't want him to be in danger. They also say that bringing the sun back won't fix the squares, and that Nico is just a lost child falling into this world. Everyone in the world machine has dealt with this shit for a long time, but Nico is like only 8, meaning that he's not even old enough to see whatever the hell is on TV nowadays. Nico does a loud aside to us that Silverpoint and George can hear, where he tells us that he wanted to go home, but before returning the sun he was uncertain, just like his identity. This game is about how it feels to be questioning. Nah, that's a stretch. Nico tells us he's not afraid anymore, like little bro is Kevin McAllister.
I'm not afraid anymore! I said I'm not afraid anymore! Do you hear me? I'm not afraid anymore!
And George is inspired. Now we can finally meet our favourite fox girl, Monica, Rue. She's happy to see us and tells us to go to the clock room. The left elevator that Lamplighter isn't stuck in works, and we tell Rue that Cedric, who could have revived Protobot, might not have made it, so she's sad that our only chance of saving the world is gone. She does tell us to go to the observatory upstairs, which is when she has exposition, telling us how she liked this area because she could sit and imagine what the lives are inside the buildings. She asks Nico if he can lift her onto the banister, and begins telling Nico how finding out the world was a simulation was depressing even for her. Nico and Rue were both, in a way, unfairly ripped from their worlds. Ruse was destroyed, and the same thing that never wanted Nico here will let him leave. This thing we've been calling the entity is actually the world machine. The entity, in a way, is the spirit of the world. It was designed to only run on the mental abilities of someone else, as Cedric said, not supposed to gain sentience. Rue calls the author her creator since she, Cedric, and Proto were actually his children. He was specialised in the horrors of AI for so long that it's essentially a key gear in his work. Get it? Gear? Anyway, as is tradition, machines had a don't let living organisms come to harm rule, which is the basis for fairly sympathetic villains. Because it's not their fault, it's faulty programming. Think HAL 9000, Auto, and ED-209? Yeah, so the world machine has to put a real person in danger by bringing them into an artificial world that's ending. The intended ending was supposed to be happy, and the world wasn't supposed to be dangerous, but the entity doesn't know that. This conflict caused a self-destructive pattern in its system, and this is exemplified in the glitches we see everywhere, especially on the catwalks. It's essentially corrupting its own code since the world doesn't believe its residents are real, so it cannot be fixed. There's no chance of buzzwording it, but what is buzzwording it, may you ask? Taming! A robot is a being that is not real and made of code. Although inflexible, they can be mass-produced and given roles, which we have seen throughout the game, with characters such as Robot, Prophet Bot, and the Helper Bots in the apartments. Something you may also know is they will never confuse themselves with those that are living. They know that they are robot, like how Monica knows everything is fake. The world machine is a result of something built that does not follow its own code. The code conflicts. We're following our HAL 9000 conventions. You can't create a robot that can't follow its own code, but you can establish a bond with it, and depending on how deep the bond is, it affects their mental capacity outside of its programming. In short, it kind of starts to feel like it's real and valid. You have to embrace that robot like it's fully real and suspend disbelief. Treat it like a friend, devote. It's not as easy as it sounds though, because the entity is scared. It doesn't want Nico to be hurt, but its self-destructive tendencies are making it hard. With that, we have no clue what else we're supposed to do. With Cedric gone, there's nothing we can do. Oh wait, look, it's them. According to Cedric, the assembly room was well equipped enough to handle the collapse, which is lucky. It seems we have a chance. With all of them finally together, we can go inside the clock room again, and use these code portals that temporarily remove the free until the codes are compiled. Nico makes confused cat noises, so Rue says the portals are physical locations on our machine. You have to move the text files for the three of them into the big portal. We put Cedric, Rue, and Proto on their respective green, red and blue colours, and then we access the portals folder. Now that the text files are in the big portal, a binary purple door fades in. Going through this leads us to this weird room which is probably related to the author's study. Cedric does actually confirm this, and the three of them are saddened by the thought of him. I mean, he did create and give birth to them all. Ahead from the desk is the world machine, and the three reminisce. The room ahead is familiar, and you know what to do. We're now in the world machine, and all that we can see is monitors depicting our adventures and memories in the Fallen Kingdom. But the top floor, containing no monitors, just the background and the signs compelling us forward. Entering the room the entity is in, and the corruption gets to us before we bump into a monitor, projects a mirror of Nico. This personifies the entity as just as scared and innocent as Nico, or at least that's what I interpret it as. The entity looks sad because Nico is trapped inside what is basically its own head, corruption closing in. Nico is inside the centre of the world machine. That voice telling us to stay out of bounds in the minds was actually the entity. It was scared that nothing was going the way it was supposed to, and that's when the cave-in happened. The entity panicking for Nico's safety. The entity feels self-hatred because it's flawed and went against its creator's wishes. It blames itself for everything, and Nico tries to convince it that the squares aren't its fault, but the entity just won't buy it. Initially, the glitches were intended to stop people from walking out of bounds, but the author was frustrated, thinking they were unintentional glitches. When an NPC got too close to the corruption, it became unbearable. The entity was scared because it nearly hurt its creator, and for some reason, Nico accidentally summoned by the world machine, and couldn't get Nico home. Smashing the sun wouldn't fix the problem, but fixing the entity would. Nico tells her that the original ending was to be happy, but the entity can't remember it. That part is gone, but at the end the sun was to be placed. The entity is sad it can't find the happy ending, but Nico tells it that it's fighting itself due to the rule. It values Nico much more than the world, kinda like an easy trolley problem. Save the world or save Nico. The entity thinks it's not worth the risk to save the people in this world over Nico because they aren't real. In extension, saving Nico is much better than saving itself, but Nico disagrees. This session that the War Machine never would have expected, the NPCs somehow managed to adapt to the situation. They managed to evacuate others and sacrifice themselves to save everyone, which is impressive considering that the entity was confused. There had to be something real about them, and to add on, the War Machine must have had something extra that its residents can do that. Nico asks to be put in the ending again, and the entity again tells him that it's gone, but Nico will risk it. The entity claims it's not tamed, but Nico thinks it is. I mean, it even speaks as if tamed. Nico and us think he's tamed. The Messiah controls us once more. Nico says we want to save the world, and Nico because we reset. The entity is willing to give it a chance and gives Nico the sun back. Nico first has to get through the squares in order to find the lost code. It disappears and we can pass through the squares. The entity contacts us, informing us that it might actually be tamed after all. It can remember bits of the code, and for Nico this world will be a dream, but for us a story. As long as we remember it and Nico remembers it, this world will be alright though. The characters on Nico's journey will also be in the next room below to say goodbye to him. We greet Silver, whom is surprised she just appeared here after the cave-in, and we tell her a bit more about the War Machine restoring the world. Robot is stuck in the room with no water. It may surprise us Nico as he thought she was dead or something. Calamus and Alula were stranded on the island, and the squares got to them. But they appeared here because they always come back. We also tell them that they are not in limbo and they will go home soon. We see Lamplighter, who had a gas leak in his elevator, or rather glitch leak, and he thinks he's dead too. He seems to care more about his solid work. Get it? Because status matter. Finally, we see our good friends, Proto, Rue and Cedric. They talk about taming more, but Nico says the War Machine was always tamed. It just needs to learn that. We had to say goodbye to best girl, Rue, though it's sad. Funnily enough, all three characters are met by vehicles. Protobot is met by a minecart, Cedric is met by a boat, and Rue is met by a funny contraption called feet. Don't know what that means, but in all seriousness, you do actually need to fly to get to the refuge, so I guess that's the vehicle, but even then you can meet her in the default route. Now we place the sun in the lighthouse and all the corruption dissipates as the light is brought into the world. Even though we already brought light before in the world, we had to do it again because video game logic. We get the same ending as placing the sun normally, but we get the scenes of the corruption plaguing the world going away. Nico says his goodbyes and runs off to his wheat field like he's ready to escape Aperture Science. He is scared for the future of the world, but we tell him it's all going to be okay. The world will be in our memories forever. Goodbye, Nico. In conclusion, Oneshot is an interesting game. I don't hate it. The puzzles are innovative, being literally before the DLC and Kanito, and the lore is cool and all, but this game, playing for it for a second time, is the same impression I get from games like Mario Odyssey. It's just not really fun anymore. It's still a really good indie game, but like the DLC, it's not fun. And I'm not going to have fun editing this because I'm exhausted. My videos don't even do well, so it's like, what's the point? My brother makes really good Splatoon montages and other things like that do awful, and it's just sad. I hate making things about myself, but I don't know why my bad videos do good and vice versa. But what's the takeaway of this game? Always smash the sun. Goodbye. Look what I did to it. There, it's done now. I am free from the one-shot video now. Goodbye, everyone. The world will end in a few seconds. Goodbye.